is presenting the judges of confusing in the program, so we are started with the judges that are representing the last.
Okay, what the committee mentioned it to me because we have to schedule, and I got it from committee by email, and this is the official schedule actually that I got on my hand.
Okay, it's fine.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'm from the University of New South Wales in Sydney. The Water Research Laboratory was doing a climate risk for extreme events in the Cook Islands, the main island of Rarotonga, mainly two extreme events in cyclones and climate change. And the vulnerability of the ports of the Pacific was brought to the attention of the Australian government at a Pacific Maritime Transport Alliance conference held in Tonga October 2012. And the Australian government took advantage of the Water Research Laboratory study being done in Rarotonga and actually got me to do a qualitative climate risk assessment. All you're going to hear about happened in 1 week. So it happened, the Australian government, when they've got money left, they want things to be done quickly. So where are the Cook Islands? The Cook Islands are way up north in the Pacific. There's a series of islands. Some of them have got high relief and others are very low-lying coral atolls. This is what the port looks like, and like most ports in the Pacific, the ports are usually being developed around passages of where fresh water used to flow across the coral. And generally the ports are developed by expanding that and dredging them out. Avatiu is the port here. What I'd bring to your attention is this is the main road. And all the infrastructure for the island is essentially right here on the shoreline. Here's the airport, here's all the fuel tanks. You might say, what a silly place to put all your fuel, but anyway, it's right there on the front. Here's the port, it's got a western breakwater and an eastern breakwater, and all the main business district is just along the road, just out of the picture. The whole area is extremely vulnerable to major cyclones. The Bureau of Meteorology and CSIRO of Australia did a major climate study for existing and future climate throughout the Pacific, and general things were temperature will increase but not much. Trade wind shifts are quite important because those trade winds will move around also both rainfall patterns both regionally and seasonally. We'll have longer, generally, particularly for Rarotonga, there'll be longer dry spells, but when it does rain it'll have higher intensity, which has impacts for agriculture as well as water supply. Storm intensity increases, which means you have higher winds and higher waves. Cyclones are the big event for the Cook Islands. They're right in the cyclone belt, as we'll see in a minute. There are clearly El Nino, La Nina cycles, which affect the weather. Tropical cyclones, essentially, they roughly have about 11 per decade, which means 1 per year. The one that everybody talks about is Tropical Cyclone Sally in 1987. It was really only a Category 2 cyclone, but it made a direct hit over the port and over the major infrastructure. It created a lot of damage, and everyone talks about it as being, we'll never have one of them again. Well, it's roughly about a 20-year average recurrence interval event. In the 2005-06 season, they had 5 Category 5 tropical cyclones passing within 400 kilometres. So essentially, they went into cyclone alert 5 times in about 2 months. This is what the port looked like after Cyclone Sally. It doesn't look too bad because the water level's down, but these were the main storage sheds. They are virtually destroyed. Water ran over the whole port. Water went up to, and we'll show you next, water ran up to the main road in the central shopping area. Okay, so this is the main central business district. The water level got up to about 2.5 metres, but what's happened and what's changed in the vulnerability assessment, we actually get a piling up of waves breaking across the lagoon, and you virtually had at the back of the lagoon about 1 metre high boards, which is like a tsunami, washing through, and it virtually destroyed all the ground floors of all of the central business district. Okay, this is what it looks like now, and I just put this picture in to give you an idea of the relief. The mountains go up to about 1,500 metres, so when it rains you get very strong runoff and high sediment loads. The port has been expanded in the last 2 years with New Zealand aid money. It's now much deeper, it can handle bigger ships, it can actually handle ships up to 120 metres. Cargo vessels can now turn around inside the port safely, which they couldn't do before. This is the slide coastal processes, and this particular issue is relevant to all areas, islands of Bali, anywhere in Indonesia where you have a coral reef offshore and a lagoon. So what you have is you'll have the normal tide level. For this area it's very small, it's only plus or minus 0.4 of a metre. You then have your storm surge, which is your barometric and wind stress. And for this area, it's between 1 and 2 metres, depending on where you are on the island when the event occurs. The 100-year wave height, the 100-year cyclone wave height offshore of the reef is 13 metres. Huge. And what that does is that drives an increase in water level across the lagoon of 1 to 3 metres. Then on top of that, you will have these bores, which will also be a 1 to 3 metre high, which acts just like a tsunami wave. And in this event, essentially the whole business district will be wiped out. This is only just coming to light as a result of the study that's only just being completed by Water Research Project. We did a risk assessment. We used the ISO standard, modified a little bit with the Australian Greenhouse Office, which is particularly for climate change. There's 2 recent publications that are useful if you're looking at ports. One by Scott et al., which is funded by an NCARF research grant, only just published in the last 2 months, and one by International Finance Corporation for a port in Colombia. And there's a range of PM publications that are helpful. Key elements of a port business: the demand, the trade levels and patterns, navigation and berthing, vehicle movements, going all the way down to the obvious ones are the good stories, but then there's the other things, the environmental performance. If you're a bad operator, you won't have a business for long. The shipping companies will start to go somewhere else. So you actually have to perform well. You have to have inland connected infrastructure. You have to perform socially. And you need to have insurance. We did a first pass vulnerability assessment, and we interviewed in a week 22 people from the different port operations and the infrastructure providers of Rarotonga. We firstly did a quick vulnerability assessment of the key port assets based around water-based, the interface, the land-based and the connected waters for a range of critical climate activities like high wind, rainfall, waves, temperature. And it always ends up back at the cyclone event. So they did the initial vulnerability assessment, rating of 0 to 5. And this is what it looks like. Now, I can't let anyone see the answers, but it's quite clear that the cyclone event is over on the right-hand column, and you'll see it's all red mostly. And so a lot of the infrastructure of the port is extremely vulnerable or at high risk from cyclones. Next thing we did, we asked them, and this was both the port operators, port manager, the harbour master, and all the infrastructure providers of the island to tell us how important the port is to their business and how important they believe the port relies on them. I feel like it's that interconnected. And this is where this qualitative risk assessment really pays off. Because everyone who runs a business, they tend to think about their business from a business perspective in the little silo of their business. They never think about their interactions with everybody else, or very rarely do that. And what we did was we actually asked, and we scored between low, medium and high, and it was quite interesting, the different perspectives of the people in the port and the people around. Qualitative risk assessment. We then went into the detailed ISO qualitative risk assessment, and we did it for the same climate events, but we did it for each identified at-risk asset within the port. Extremely took a long time. Okay, and here's one. This is, if you like, this is the sheet done just by the harbour master in respect of the risk of his tugboat. And there's one of these for every other asset, done by multiple people. Connected infrastructure. Roads, bridges, stormwater, water supply and wastewater. I've lumped them together because they are under the control of the Ministry of Infrastructure and Planning. So one ministry looks after all those infrastructure issues. The fuel supply, diesel, petrol, aviation gas, tankers. Tankers come on a 6-week delivery. Goods and services below 2 cargo vessels come on different cycles, about 18 to 21 days. The airport. Amazing, little tiny airport. They still use 20,000 litres of Jet A1 fuel every day. For safety reasons, they're far enough away that planes have to refuel there before they can go back. So it is quite critical. And the other thing is, when we come to the tourism, 75% of the islands on the Cook Island nation's GDP is from tourism. So if you impact tourism in any way, your economy is down. Emergency management we spoke to, and we also spoke to the environmental services. The results and key findings: cyclones of highest risk, the port of practice, and it's interesting, they had an incredible adaptive capacity. They developed it. What they did was, when there was a cyclone coming, 3 days out, they got good warning. They moved all the stacked containers, they moved all their movable assets out of the port up to high ground. They brought trucks and low loaders in, loaded all their forklifts, all their cranes, and they even pulled the tugboat out of the water and then took it up the hill. They also then asked all the vessels of the harbour to leave. There was no ships left in the harbour because the harbour master's nightmare is a ship sinking in the channel. So everyone had to leave, and they used to go around the shelter or the lee side of the island. But that wasn't the port. But that was to save the port. They generally recover within 3 days. So they evacuate, get everything out. Once the cyclone's gone, they bring everything back, and they're back in business within 3 days. And because of the cycle of the ships, that really has not impacted on delivery. The port relies on the road and bridge system, but really is independent of water, power and communications. It can operate without anything else. The only thing that will stop them operating is after the cyclone event, there'll be lots of coral rocks and boulders up on the roads. They clear them off in about a day, and then they're back in business. In contrast, the fuel, power, the airport, all the food and goods, if the port is out, the economy's dead. They have about 1 month's supply in storage. So if there's no ships come, or you don't get the port back into business within a month, they're in real trouble. And we'll have, another disaster like a tsunami event with aid agencies all pouring in aeroplanes and water supply systems and everything else. Now this just puts it into perspective. The power station, fortunately, is up the hill. That's Te Ponga. Here's the power station. It's up there. And the whole island is only 30 kilometres in circumference. This is where all critical infrastructure, that's only 3 kilometres. It's all there. You've got the port, you've got all the CBD here, you've got the various fuel storages and the airport and the power station. And it's all in the most exposed part of the island on the northern side, which gets most of the cyclone impact. Implications of the WRL findings: the 100-year cyclone, which will give you the 13-metre high waves, or now estimated at 13 metres breaking on the reef. You'll have an elevated water level, which the still water level elevated will reach the top of the road in the CBD, and on top of that you'll have a 1 to 3 metre tsunami-type bore of water going across the road, which is different to what they've ever envisaged. So there's going to be a dramatic change in how they're going to manage that, what they're going to do about that, and it hasn't been resolved yet. Major conclusions we've got that the methodology developed, and we pretty well, in 7 days we managed to do the qualitative risk assessment involving all the infrastructure providers. So the methodology is there to take it and roll it out in other ports across the Pacific if the government wants to do it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ron.J. Cox. Okay, your presentation reminded me to several years ago when I was in Australia. Yeah, one title in the newspaper, The Age, mentioning that global warming and climate change is real. It's not only about talk the talk. It's real and happening in our country, they said. And it is real based on your presentation and scientific data. Alright, now